There is no wall left. Sergeant Marcus Hale presses his back against a heap of shattered limestone that used to be a rampart and feels the last magazine seat into his rifle. In front of him, where a fortress wall stood 6 days ago, there is only a slope of rubble the color of old bone. And pouring up that slope come the janissaries, hundreds of them, in long white coats and tall white felt caps, curved Yatagahan sabers flashing in the dawn, screaming the name of God. On the broken parapet above him, a soldier of the Sultan has already planted a green banner stitched with a gold crescent, and it snaps in the harbor wind like a victory the enemy has already earned. Hale has 11 rounds. There are 6,000 men in this wave alone. 6 days earlier, the wall was still standing. The place is a splinter of rock called Fort St. Elmo, and it is the smallest, most doomed position in the whole Mediterranean.
It sits at the very tip of a peninsula on the island of Malta, a four-pointed star of stone guarding the mouth of the Grand Harbour. And in the summer of 1565, it has become the hinge on which the fate of 2 empires turns. Sultan the Magnificent, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, master of a realm that stretches from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, has sent his fleet and his army west to take Malta and turn the sea into an Ottoman lake. 40,000 men, and the last thing standing between them and the great harbor is this one small fort and the few hundred souls inside it. They are the Knights of St. John, the Hospitallers, the last Crusaders, in black surcoats marked with a plain white cross, backed by Maltese militia and Spanish soldiers. Their Grand Master has told them the truth to their faces. St. Elmo cannot be saved.
Its walls are already crumbling under the guns the Turks have dragged onto the heights of Mount Skibaras, whose cannon rain iron down into the fort day and night. The garrison's only job is to die slowly enough to buy the great fortresses across the water a few more weeks. They are a sacrifice. They know it. Every man who rows across the harbor at night to reinforce St. Elmo knows he is rowing to his own grave. And on the 6th night before the wall comes down, the grave cracks open with blue light. It begins in the fort's central courtyard beside the cistern, where the wounded lie moaning in the dark. The air, thick all night with a stench of gangrene and burnt powder, suddenly goes cold, a wrongness that makes the sentries clutch their crucifixes. A low hum climbs into the teeth. Then a seam of blinding electric blue light tears open above the stones, spilling the smell of scorched copper across the courtyard, and out of it step figures that no knight, no janissary, no man alive in 1565 has the words to name. 40 of them. They wear mottled tan cloth that swallows the torchlight, hard plates across their chests, rounded helmets, and over their eyes sit strange tubes glowing faint green. They move low and fast and silent, spreading through the courtyard, short black weapons raised, and they do not speak. A reinforced platoon of United States Marines, 40 riflemen and their attachments, had been running a night live fire package on a Mediterranean training range in the year 2025. One heartbeat of blue light, and the range, the trucks, the radios that connect them to the world are all 460 years away. Staff Sergeant David Reyes keys his radio and hears the dead hiss of a century that has no radios. He flips up his night vision and looks at torchlight on ancient stone, at a wounded man in a blood-stained white cross, staring up at him as though the Archangel Michael has come at last. He walks to the crumbling edge of the fort and looks out. Across a narrow strip of black water, the slopes of Mount Skibaras glitter with 10,000 campfires. He sees the ordered lines of an army beyond counting. He sees the muzzles of great bronze siege guns catching the firelight. He sees, planted on the heights, the horse-tail standards of the Ottoman host. "Gunny," Reyes says quietly. That's not a training aggressor force. Lieutenant Cole Brenner has read about this siege. Most Marines have. He knows how it ends. He knows every man inside these walls is written down in history as dead. He looks at the exhausted knights, at the Maltese boys carrying powder, at the wounded by the cistern who cannot walk. Then he looks at the army across the water. Then we change the ending, he says.
They are Marines. There are people here who are about to be slaughtered. It doesn't matter how they arrived. They have a job. By first light, Brenner has walked the whole fort, and the problem is written in the stone itself. St. Elmo is small. A man can cross it in 90 seconds. The Turkish guns on the heights have already chewed the seaward wall down to a jagged stump, and every hour the breach grows wider. This is the nightmare that has no clean answer. The defenders' one advantage is that the enemy must funnel through the breach, but the breach itself is dying. Soon there will be no wall at all, and 40 rifles cannot ring a whole hilltop. He gathers his team leaders in the shadow of the cistern and lays the ledger out flat, because his Marines need the numbers spoken plainly. 40 riflemen. Their carbines, a weapon that throws a small, fast bullet across the length of a soccer pitch before the sound catches up. And each Marine carries 7 magazines, 210 rounds a rifle, roughly 8,400 rounds of carbine ammunition, and not one more. 2 belt-fed machine guns with a combined 900 linked rounds, enough to sound like the end of the world for 4 minutes of continuous fire, and then they are cooling steel in empty trays. 4 directional mines packed with steel balls, 2 blocks of plastic explosive, a dozen grenades, a sniper pair with a heavy rifle and 80 rounds between them. Their night vision runs on batteries with 3 nights of hard use left before they go dark. Water, at least, is not the killer here. The fort sits on a cistern, and the sea is at their feet. The killer here is geometry. Every hour, the wall that shapes the fight erodes a little more. 40,000 men across the water. 8,400 rifle rounds inside the fort. A wall dissolving by the hour. Brenner says it out loud and keeps his voice flat. We can't kill 40,000 Ottomans. We don't have the bullets and we don't have the wall, so we don't fight the army. We fight the willingness of one man, Mustafa Pasha, to keep feeding his best troops into that breach. We make the price of St. Elmo higher than the Sultan will pay. That's the mission. Run it yourself. 8,400 rounds, assault waves 6,000 strong, a wall that will be gone in days. Tell me in the comments if that math closes, because Brenner ran it 3 times and didn't like the answer any of them. The first assault comes at dawn on the second day, and it comes through the breach. 6,000 men surge up the rubble slope behind a wall of noise, drums, cymbals, 10,000 voices. In the front rank climb the shock troops of the Empire, janissaries in long belted coats and tall white bork caps, mail glinting beneath, curved sabers drawn, the fanatics called the Ayalars, stripped to the waist and drugged against fear. And behind them the disposable masses of irregular Bashi bazooks with spears and hooks. One of the men climbing that slope is a janissary named Ibrahim, 30 years old, taken as a boy and raised to be the finest infantry on earth. He has stormed walls from Rhodes to Hungary. He knows the rhythm of a siege, the volley, the smoke, the gap, the rush. So when he crests the rubble, and there is no cloud of white powder smoke, no roar of massed muskets, only a few dozen crouched shapes and a sound like a giant coughing in the dark, his mind refuses it. The man beside him drops with a neat hole in his chest and no arrow in it. The man behind that one folds over. There is no smoke to tell him where death lives. Ibrahim throws himself flat behind a corpse and understands. with an animal certainty older than words, that the fort has been given to demons, and that no shield in the empire turns aside a thing that leaves no smoke. The wave breaks. 6,000 men recoil down the slope they climbed, leaving the rubble carpeted in white coats gone red. For the first time in the siege, St. Elmo has thrown the Sultan's army back down the hill. 40 Marines still standing. Rifle ammunition, 88%. Machine gun belts, 2/3 remaining. The wall, worse than yesterday. Mustafa Pasha, commander of the Sultan's land army, is not a butcher who spends men for sport. He is a patient engineer of sieges, and he watches the second assault die on the rubble and does not rage. He studies. The demons strike from great distance and in the dark, he reasons, so he will take away both. He orders the next assaults launched at night, when the far-killing magic seems to falter.
He brings more guns onto the heights and doubles the bombardment, working to erase the breach entirely so his men can pour in on a broad front no handful of defenders can cover. And he sends boats, long, low craft packed with janissaries, rowing around the point in darkness to storm the fort from the seaward side, where the wall is lowest and the water laps the stone. The night boats nearly succeed. They come in on muffled oars while the guns thunder from the heights to mask the sound, and it is only the sniper pair on the cistern roof, scanning the black water through green light, who catch the wakes. There is no wall left on that side to stop them. The Marines fight at the waterline in the dark, rifles flashing, janissaries swarming over the rocks with sabers, and for 90 seconds it is knife close and screaming and utterly uncertain. Mustafa has found the fort's blind flank and very nearly walked through it. 2 Marines are cut before the last boat is driven back into the surf. The lesson lands on both sides at once. The fort has more than one throat, and 40 rifles cannot guard them all forever. 40 Marines still standing, 2 wounded. Rifle ammunition, 69%. Sniper rounds, half gone. The seaward wall, effectively open. Then the siege itself begins to break the Marines' machines, exactly as Brenner feared. The assaults never truly stop now, and continuous fire cooks the machine gun barrels until they glow and warp, and a warped barrel is a length of ruined pipe. The gunners ration their bursts, counting rounds like misers. The pale limestone dust, kicked up by every impact of every cannonball on the heights, sifts into everything, into bolts and springs and eyes, and rifles that have run flawless for years begin to choke and stutter. On the third night, the first set of night vision goggles dies, its battery spent, and a Marine who owned the dark is suddenly as blind in it as any Turk. Corporal Reyes, clearing a jam by feel while cannonballs walk across the courtyard, glances at the horsetail standards glowing on the heights and lets out a short, ugly laugh. These guys built the biggest empire on the planet with muzzle loaders and rowboats, he mutters, and we're about to lose a fort because a AAA battery gave up. Nobody laughs, but Brenner, checking the last block of plastic explosive, almost does. 40 Marines still standing, 2 wounded. Rifle ammunition, 41%. 1 machine gun down to a spare barrel, the other gone. 2 sets of goggles dead. The wall nearly level with the rubble. On the 6th day, the wall is gone, and the flash forward arrives. Mustafa throws everything at the dawn. His guns have finally erased the breach into a broad, open slope, and up it comes the greatest wave of the siege. 6,000 men on a front too wide for 40 rifles. Janissaries in the lead, sabers high, and behind them a soldier scrambling to plant the green crescent banner on the broken parapet.
The Marines fall back to a horseshoe of rubble around the cistern, firing into a mass that does not stop coming. Barrels smoke, magazines run dry down the line, man after man calling it out. Sergeant Hale's last magazine clicks home, and he has 11 rounds, and the banner is already flying above him. Brenner does not reach for a rifle. He reaches for the plastic clacker taped to his vest, the trigger for the last block of explosive, which his engineer packed 2 nights ago deep beneath the rubble slope, in the one channel every assault is forced to climb. He lets them come.
He lets the whitecoats fill the slope, lets them believe the fort is finally theirs, lets the front ranks reach the very lip of the courtyard. He squeezes the clacker. The slope erupts. The charge does not throw fire so much as it throws the mountain of rubble itself. Tons of shattered limestone heaving up and outward, collapsing the packed channel and burying the front 3 ranks of the assault under the very wall they came to climb. The green banner and the man who raised it vanish into the dust, and in the ringing aftermath, the survivors of the finest infantry in the world stand on a slope of fresh stone, deafened and blind, staring at the crouched shapes that still hold the courtyard and still have not made a sound they understand. 40 Marines still standing. Rifle ammunition, 9%. The breach, choked with rubble and Ottoman dead. The assault, broken. Across the water, Mustafa Pasha stands among his silent guns and looks at the small fort that has swallowed a week of his army and a mountain of his best men. He is a servant of the greatest empire on earth, and St. Elmo, a splitter of rock that was supposed to fall in 3 days, has not fallen in 6. He looks at the choked breach, at the janissaries who will not climb it again, at the demons who bleed his empire and cannot be reached. For the first time in the campaign, the cold thing moves in his chest. He does not order another dawn assault. His janissaries will not go back up that slope. He orders the seaward batteries to hold and the boats to stand off. And he waits. And waiting for a siege on a timetable is the same as losing. Inside the fort there is no cheering. The Marines sink down in the rubble in the sudden ringing quiet and count their rounds. 9%, a handful a man. And they look at the exhausted knights still standing on the walls that were meant to be their tombs. But the cost is written in their own blood now. Corporal Elias Vance, 24, of Bakersfield, took a saber across the throat at the waterline on the 3rd night and did not survive it. His body lies under a poncho by the cistern, and 2 Marines sit beside it without speaking, because there are no words that fit. The fort held. Not every one of them did. That is the shape of this victory, and it is spoken by no one. The blue light returns at dusk, tearing open above the cistern with its hum and its stink of scorched copper, spitting sparks against the ancient stone. Their time is up. They carry Vance through first. They do not leave their dead in the 16th century. Then, one by one, the strangers step backward into the light. And Brenner is the last. He looks once at the broken fort that did not fall and steps through. With a crack of displaced air, they are gone, and nothing remains but a scatter of brass casings gleaming among the rubble, and the knights who will swear to the end of their lives that God sent armored angels the week the wall came down. The change ripples outward across the whole sea. Because St. Elmo does not fall on schedule, the Sultan's army is bled and delayed before the true fortresses across the harbor, and the weeks the sacrifice was meant to buy stretch into the weeks that save the island. The Great Relief Fleet arrives to find the Ottoman host broken on Maltese stone. The tide that was meant to make the Mediterranean an Ottoman lake breaks here, at the mouth of the Grand Harbour, and rolls back. The frontier of an empire that had not stopped advancing in 200 years is fixed in the sea off a tiny fort, and the whole long contest for the center of the world tilts quietly on a slope of rubble that 40 men refuse to give up. All because a Marine decided a doomed fort was worth holding and buried a wave of the Sultan's finest under the very wall they came to take. History turns on the smallest of hinges. A week of one fort's stubbornness, and the map of an age bends around it. So tell me down in the comments, was blowing the breach worth spending the last explosive instead of the last bullets? Would you have held the seaward wall a different way before it cost Vance his life? And which last stand should we rewrite next? Drop a ranger platoon onto the walls of Constantinople in 1453? Or put a rifle company into the shield wall at Hastings? Drop your wildest calls below. Smash that hype button to push this video to more people. And I'll see you on the next wall. Hold the line.